I'm sure you're all familiar with the infamous concept of burnout. Overworking in the game dev industry is a serious problem, not to mention solo developing, and it's one that I found myself falling victim to in the past year. The more a project progresses, the more working on it can come to feel like a chore. A great example of this was the entire reason I stopped working on Honor for Hire. The scope grew out of control, the work didn't feel fulfilling anymore, and my motivation got sapped. So what was my strategy to keep this from happening with yet another passion project? Quit. Okay, it's not that simple. And don't worry, Robbit is still coming along nicely with a lot of progress that I'll share with you later in the video. In all seriousness though, the best remedy I found for burnout while working on it was to take a step back and focus on the rest of my life. This year of college kind of kicked up the difficulty a notch from the last, and with classes taking up more and more of my time, I had less to devote to developing Robbit and putting videos together for the channel. But you know what? That was perhaps the best thing that could have happened for the health of the project. Throughout the year, I found small windows of time to work on the game, and it was quite fun hopping back in to add some features I'd been brainstorming that week. It allowed me to keep progressing instead of losing all desire to work on it, like what happened with Honor for Hire. So with that out of the way, what have I added since the last video? One of the largest features I've been working on is a complete revamp to the cloud system. In previous entries, you might remember that the clouds were a single animated sprite moving up and down, and that the animations to transition between levels acted in a similar way. Well, not anymore. My initial goal here was to make the clouds both more dynamic and more visually appealing, as well as trying to separate them visually from the trees. It all started with this simple design, a single tiny round cloud. I was able to use it as a bit of a template to draw out these variations, and the more that I created, the more I was able to build off of them. I ended up with 18 different clouds to work with, and the goal was to make them all animated separately around the border of the screen, so I got to work. Previously, I separated all of the extra pieces involved in a level into their own Godot scene called Level Extras. Within this scene, I created a polygon 2D to act as an array of points with just a bunch of random points around the edge of the level area, making sure to keep it close but not organized feeling. These would be the spawn points for the clouds. Jumping into the code, we start in Ready, where I preload the cloud scene and generate a cloud at each point of the polygon. The generate cloud function does all the heavy lifting here, making sure that each cloud is instantiated, added as a child of the parallax, and positioned properly. This bit's pretty interesting. I have a weight variable to determine which clouds get selected. I want the clouds to be randomized but always fill the background, so I had to make sure that it only selects them from the frames that'll be large enough. There's a range of 9 clouds that can be selected, and due to how the weighting works, you'll get one of the biggest 4 a little less than 75% of the time. Once I got this working, it was time to get them moving. I started with a very similar code to the original cloud background, but I needed a way to make it distinct for each cloud. I ended up adding a variable to them that gets randomized when the cloud is initialized, mod, which selects a random float value between 2 and 4. When I multiply the time within the signed function by that, it makes sure that each cloud will be moving differently. I add the offset to their positions in the process function, and here's the result. As I was going through the code, you may have noticed some sneaky additions in the background. This feature isn't quite complete yet, and it has some ironing out to do, but I decided to experiment with clouds randomly crossing the screen as you play. It's implemented in almost the exact same way with a few key differences. First, in Ready, the cloud cycle function is called. This function handles the continual spawning of clouds, and as you can see here, will call itself again after a random interval of 5 to 8 seconds. I also have a bit of code here that ensures the same position can't be selected again. Once created, these clouds are placed in the scrolling clouds group by setting the scrolling variable in the function to true. I also make the shadow visible. Finally, within process, I treat them exactly the same apart from the horizontal movement I've added here. The final result looks a little silly due to constant overshadowing of the player, so I've been considering changing it to just shadows crossing the screen. Let me know what you guys think I should do in the comments. Moving on to some of the smaller things, I've completed a bunch of random props to be scattered throughout the levels. I designed a little train that'll be able to pass by in the background, locked in a design for how water in the game will look, and even made a waterfall surrounded by boulders. We've also got a bridge, a mailbox, and a trash can, and I've got plans to make many more, plus seasonal variations for all of these. I like the direction I've been moving in with these though, and I can't wait to finish more levels so I can begin decorating the backgrounds. After completing the calendar animations in the last devlog, I discussed the difficulties that stickers are going to cause, so that was one of the first things that I wanted to tackle before the task became too daunting. My idea was to have them peel off the page when it turns, then the next page can place its stickers. The most difficult part of this implementation would be the peeling and placing animations, as I wanted them to be standardized instead of having 2 different animations for each of the 18 stickers. Also important would be the ability to move stickers and have their positions stay the same when I flip the pages. I figured the best way to accomplish this was just by toggling visibility. Beginning with the functionality for moving the stickers, I added a button to the sticker entity and used that to check when the mouse was hovered over and clicked. In the process function, I then had it set its position to the mouse position if it was currently held. This caused a bit of a weird offset and movement at first, so I went ahead and added this line to figure out the offset from the center to the mouse when the sticker is initially selected and account for it. With sticker movements down, it was time for the hard part. I created a new node for each season to store its stickers, added those to an array named sticker groups, then put a couple of them in for testing purposes. Next, we come down here to the stickers function. I pass it 2 parameters, page and direction, so it can have a single call determine exactly what needs to happen. Depending on the direction it needs to go and the current page, the function determines whether a sticker needs to peel or place, which is handled on the individual level. Peeling manually animates the sticker forward and makes it not visible after the animation completes, and place goes backwards to put the sticker on the page. Since all I'm doing is toggling visibility, the stickers easily keep their positions on the page, and all I need to do now is store it globally to keep it consistent when going back and forth between levels. As I'm sure you can tell, the buttons in the level select don't quite look the same as they did before. I've been hiding the changes a little bit up to this point, but it's time to reveal the final new feature of this devlog, level icons. For each of the seasons, I went into Aseprite and designed a little animated icon that pops up when the page is flipped. I miniaturized some of the key props for the seasons to help design these, and tried to capture the most important parts. In Godot, though, these were going to be a bit more difficult than standard buttons. I kept the original button as a child of the scene, which meant I had some rewriting to do so it could properly access its parents and switch scenes. After that, and once I got the sprite sheet added in, the design began. Each icon has an exported variable season that lets me predetermine what frame it'll start on, and when they're selected by the player, all they have to do is move forward 1 frame to reach the selected state. I treated the animations almost identical to the stickers, having them manually go up and down in frames in order to keep things compressed, but I might end up changing that due to an issue that arose that I'll cover in a bit. Finally, within the flip page function in the level select menu code, I wait for the page animation to finish before popping up the icons, and similarly, I pop the icons down on the current page before sending it to the next one. The issue that came up had to do with how I want this to be. It'd look really solid if the icons went shortly after each other in the order of the levels. However, for some reason, the animations don't run properly when I do this, and I think it has something to do with the fact that they're both using timers in the tree. I'll attempt some other fixes, but if they don't work out, I think I'll transfer the button animations into a proper animation player node. Last but most certainly not least, the soundtrack for Robbit is complete. In February of 2024, I got in contact with another YouTuber and composer, Snoodle, to discuss commissioning a soundtrack. I'm happy to announce that everything went smoothly and they did an excellent job capturing the vibe that I wanted. Once I got the final songs, I got a rudimentary implementation to play them in Godot, and it works pretty solid. The songs faded between each other moving from the menu to the levels, and it's able to use the season to decide which soundtrack it should be using. Along with this video, I've posted the full Robbit soundtrack, and I've linked Snoodle's channel in the description of both this video and that one. Go give the soundtrack a listen, and go check out his other work. That's about it for this devlog. I'm glad to be back in the swing of things and properly working on Robbit. And not only do I plan on being more consistent with uploads coming up, I also want to work on some different styles of video to have a wider range of content on the channel. I'm considering doing tutorials for some of the systems in the game, as well as some more varied game development related content. Stay tuned, and I promise it won't be a year before the next video comes out.